In this video, we're going to be walking through how to load multiple separate Excel workbooks into Power BI in a single query. So to get started, let's look at the Excel file that we're using in this demonstration. So this file has bike sales. So some of the bikes are new, some are used. So we're tracking the condition of the bikes that we're selling, as well as the type of bike, whether it's road bikes, mountain bikes, or electric bikes. This data is being repeated across multiple tabs and just showing the sales for our different years. So 2022 sales, 2021 sales, 2022, 2021, and 2020 sales. This file that we're looking at in particular is only for our Minneapolis location, but we actually have sales in other cities as well. So I'm just going to open up the File Explorer and show the other Excel workbooks here. So we also have sales in Duluth, St. Cloud, and not only do we have sales in other cities in Minnesota, but we also have sales in other states as well. So like if we open up Wisconsin, we see that we have sales in Green Bay and Madison as well. So with that, let's go into Power BI and see how we can bring all of these files in using a single query. So the first thing we're going to want to do is select Get Data, this drop down here, and go to More. Alright, so from here we're going to want to select the folder option and connect. Now we need to browse for our folder. Now you could navigate to a specific subfolder like the state, or in this case I'm going to select the bike sales folder because when we connect to the bike sales folder, it's also going to return the files from the subfolders like Illinois, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. So I'm going to click OK and OK. So now we can see each of the files that Power BI found in the bike sales folder. So each row is showing us a different file. So we have the Chicago sales, Duluth, Minneapolis, St. Cloud, Green Bay, and Madison. And we can also see details about these files. So we can see what kind of files they are. In this case, they're all Excel workbooks. We can also see when they were modified, created, things like that. Anyways, we're going to click on Transform Data. And now let's only keep the columns of data that we care about. So we're going to want to keep this content column because that's where the raw data for each of these files sits. Let's also keep the name of these files because this is going to be a new field or variable that we want to analyze our data by, right? The city that these sales occurred in. And if we scroll to the right, let's also keep the folder path because that has some useful information there that we can use later, specifically the subfolder names like Illinois, Minnesota, Wisconsin. So we're going to select each of these column headers. We can do multi-select with Control. So Control click, Control click. All right, now I'm going to right click on the selected column header and remove other columns. Before we combine files, let's clean up the folder path a little bit. I'm going to select the folder path column. I'm going to select a specific row in this column. And I'm going to copy all of it except for the part at the end that I want to keep, which is the state. Everything before the state name. I'm going to click on the folder path column, replace values, and I'm going to replace everything I just copied there with nothing. So basically I'm removing the first part of the folder path, leaving only the subfolder, and I'm also going to replace the slash. I'm going to replace, and I'm going to replace the slash with nothing, and OK. I'm also going to update the name of this column from folder path to state, so I'll just double click on the column header and call this state. I'm also going to rename the name column to city. We can do another replace values here on the .xlsx. So I'm going with the column selected, again replace values. Going to remove the .xlsx with nothing. Okay. And now we have our sales by state, city, but we don't have anything more detailed than that. So let's work on combining our files now. So click on the Combine Files icon next to Content. And now you'll see that our list of applied steps is going to get a lot longer, and we're also going to get some additional queries. Before that happens, Power BI is asking us what data we want to extract from each of these files. So in this case, it's looking at the first file in our folder, which is our Chicago file, and it found 3 different tabs of data, and it's asking which of these tabs do we want to extract data from. I'm just going to select the 2022 file. That's the 2022 tab. That's the most recent data within each of these separate workbooks. So with 2022 selected, I'll click OK. And if the query editor, if you're not seeing it, it might have just went behind your existing window. So you can always come down here to find it if you're not seeing it. So anyways, let's walk through the changes that have happened after we combined all these files. So on the left-hand side, you'll notice that we went from one query, bike sales, to multiple queries here. And this is all helping us to combine our files. We'll walk through what's going on here in just a moment. On the right-hand side, we have our list of applied steps. So again, the first few steps here are the same as what we've already seen. We had our source step where we connected to the folder. We removed all the columns that we didn't need. We replaced the folder path, the beginning part of the folder path, and the ending part of the folder path. Then we renamed columns. So this is now city, this is now state. And then we got rid of the .xlsx off of the city column. This is when we clicked Combine Files. And when we clicked Combine Files, the rest of these applied steps were auto-generated. So the first auto-generated applied step was this filtered hidden files. I believe this is hiding any files within the folder that are not visible. Next, we have our invoke custom function 1. So this is the really interesting part of combined files. So we'll spend a little bit on this step here. So in this applied step, we have our raw Excel data going through this transform sample file query and returning a cleaned table. So let's look at this transform sample file query where each of the Excel workbooks are going through and being cleaned up before they're brought back into this consolidated query. So click on transform sample file. And now let's walk through the applied steps here. So when we click on source, in our data preview, we can see that Power BI found 3 tabs of data, or 3 separate sheets. The next applied step was navigation. This is where we navigated to the 2022 sheet. And then lastly, Power BI automatically promoted headers, generated this applied header, promoted header step. So here we have bike type, bike condition, and sales. So now if we go back to our consolidated query, back to the invoke custom function step that we were just on, you'll see that the binary data, which went through the transform sample file query, is being returned in this new column called transform file. And if we click on the cell, not the word table, but the cell around it, you'll see it loads a preview of what data is contained within this transform file. So here you'll see that the column headers have been promoted, and then it's showing the data from the 2022 sheet. And we can see that for multiple files here. The next applied step was remove other columns 1. In this step, Power BI removed all the columns except for the transformed data. Then it expanded the column to show all of the transformed data in a single query here. And lastly, it changed the data type, marking these columns as text, text, and decimal number. But we're going to want to make a couple quick changes here. So I'm actually going to delete the last couple steps here, the change type, expanded table column 1. And I'm going to update this remove other columns 1 step I'm going to select the cogwheel to the right, and I'm going to keep the state and city columns because those are relevant data. That's relevant data that I would like to keep in the file. So I'm going to select OK. And now I'm going to combine these files, keeping those other columns there. I'm going to uncheck Use Original Column Name as Prefix and select OK. So now we have our data by city and state, as well as the data within each of those tabs. So lastly, I'm going to identify the data types. These are already identified as text. I'm going to modify the bike type to show text as well as the bike condition. And I'm going to update the sales data type to a decimal number. So with that, we should be good to close and apply. So now we have our bike sales. If we expand this open, we can see we have bike condition, bike type, city, sales, amount, and state. So now let's look at our data. So we'll double click on the canvas here, opening up the Q&A visual. I'm going to say show sales by bike type in a pie chart. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to turn this Q&A visual into a standard visual. And there we go, we've got sales by bike type. But now we're looking at sales in lots of different cities and states. So let's bring that data in as well. So I'll make this a little bit smaller. I'll create another Q&A visual, just double clicking on the canvas, saying, let's look at sales by state. And I'll convert this into a standard visual as well. And now we can cross-filter between these visuals and see how our sales compare in our different states. So in this video, we walked through how to connect to multiple separate Excel files and bring those into Power BI using a single query. Hope you found it helpful. Thanks.